If you have ever found yourself saying, I don't want to price myself out of the market, or feeling guilty when considering raising your prices, you are about to discover why being the affordable option is actually a financial trauma. The hidden cost of undercharging isn't just the money that you are leaving on the table, it's the cycle of resentment, exhaustion, and trauma responses that keep you trapped. In my book, It's Not About the Money, chapter 20, I talk about how under earning often starts as a trauma response. So, what happens is you overwork, you want to prove yourself, so this repeats, and we still feel undeserving. And today we're going to talk about how to break that loop. Because really, you've learned that charging less keeps you safe from rejection. But what's really happening is that every time you undercharge, you're training your body to believe that you are worth less. And so that belief doesn't just affect your pricing, which ultimately may affect your own financial stability. It actually rewires how you show up in almost every single area of your life. So, welcome to episode 3 in the Breaking Money Cycles series. If you are new here, welcome. Please go back and listen to episode 1 and 2 in this series, where we explored the 3 money zones and why you can actually feel broke even when you do have money. And you can also download all of the juicy resources, including a guided heart audio and 3 money zones exercise. You can download all of those resources to make this an even more powerful experience for you at themoneypanel.co.uk/breaking money cycles. Now, I know that pricing is probably one of the biggest areas, especially for entrepreneurs, that we constantly go round and round the houses on. You might have even raised your prices or at least considered it, but then maybe someone's questioned your rates, or somebody said no to working with you, or you found yourself even apologizing for your pricing, and then suddenly you're right back to being the reasonable option and offering discounts and reducing your prices again. And that's very often because undercharging isn't just about the money. It's about the trauma responses that are hijacking the giving money zone. And if you listen to episode 1 in this series, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But let me do a bit of a recap for you. So your relationship with money operates within 3 money zones. We have the receiving zone, which is zone 1. We have the holding zone, zone 2, and then the giving zone, zone 3. Think of these like the different rooms in your houses. So each of them is serving a completely different purpose, different functionality, but they're all interconnected. So very often the receiving zone is your capacity to accept good things into your life, money, opportunities, compliments, help. And when this zone is very healthy, you can receive it with gratitude. But when it's hijacked by this kind of a not enough programming, then we end up deflecting those compliments. We undercharge before anyone's even asked. We push away opportunities that could actually help us to thrive. The holding zone, this is your ability to hold and keep and enjoy what you have received. So there may actually be some dysfunctioning around both zone 1 and zone 2. They're very interconnected. But when zone 2 is functioning really well, then you can save without feeling anxious. You can spend without feeling guilty. You can invest with confidence. When it's compromised, we can end up hoarding money where we can't enjoy it, or we're constantly worried about, is this going to be enough? And so we can often experience guilt as well about having more than other people. Then we have giving zone, zone 3. This is your capacity to share your resources from this place of genuine abundance, genuine choice, feeling resourced, feeling not a lack of mindset, but this mindset where we know it's always going to be there for us. And this healthy giving zone feels really good. It helps other people. But when it gets hijacked by trauma responses, giving then becomes quite compulsive. It almost becomes this reason to prove your worthiness by making yourself indispensable, by making yourself the caregiver. And perhaps you overgive because really we're avoiding rejection. And undercharging is where all of these three zones get hijacked simultaneously. So we end up pushing money away in the receiving zone. We feel guilty about what we like when we have it in the holding zone, and then we over deliver in the giving zone to compensate for charging less in the receiving zone, right? So it's the perfect storm of financial self-sabotage. Now, let me give you a couple of examples of how this shows up. And I'm actually going to refer to chapter 20 in my book, It's Not About the Money, which if you don't have a copy of this already, you can grab a free a physical copy, paperback copy by heading to catherinemorgan.com/book. Now, in fact, I just gave you the wrong link. It's catherinemorgan.com/podcast. That is the right link. So some of the symptoms that you might be an under-earner might be, number one, you are rejecting ideas that can bring more prosperity or profitability into your business. Two, finding yourself in a cycle of proving yourself over and over again. Three, clinging to broken or useless possessions. Funnily enough, that is actually a symptom of under-earning because we don't feel deserving enough to replace those broken items. Habitually overworking. 5, choosing to work alone. 6, failing to follow up on opportunities. This is a really big one when you may have attracted lots of leads or inquiries, but then we actually fail to follow through because we feel like chasing is a bad thing, chasing the money. And then finally, feeling trapped or stuck and actually showing this in your language. Now, under-earning is a condition of deprivation where your emotional, your physical needs are not being met. So let me give you an example of a student who came into our Financial Coach Tools program about 18 months ago. And, she was charging around £50 an hour for work that really should have been at around £300 an hour when she was looking at her kind of corporate counterparts. And she was like, I sleep really well at night knowing that I'm helping people. And when we asked her about how was this supporting her own financial goals, how was her financial situation looking like for her personally, she was like, well, I don't even know if I can pay my mortgage this month. And Sarah wasn't just kind of undercharging. She was people pleasing and putting the needs of other people before her own financial needs. And I see this a lot, especially when people are transitioning from employed corporate work into self-employed, because it's that whole mindset transition across. And very often, you've done all the things, you've done the competitor analysis, you've done the value-based pricing work. Maybe you're using the know your worth affirmations, which, by the way, I really dislike when people say charge your worth, because if you don't feel like your worth is good enough, then you're never going to charge maybe what you should be charging, right? So it's about separating who you are, your sense of identity, away from money. It's not about charging your worth, right? And every time we have this conversation about pricing, what actually happens in our body is our body contracts, right? It either expands, it feels very joyful, or it contracts. And the contraction is often to do with trauma. It's a trauma response. It's a freeze response. It's a run away, I'm in danger response, right? And what most people don't really consider in this conversation is that undercharging is this trauma response. It's this nervous system response. And then when your body believes that you're asking for too much or you're greedy, then we're going to stay stuck in this pricing conversation. Makes sense when you think about it. And money trauma does create patterns like people pleasing, overgiving, avoiding financial conversations. And undercharging is where all of these kind of trauma responses can kind of converge together. And it's our nervous system's way of trying to keep you safe, and it's trying to keep you safe from the perceived threats. They're not actual threats, but they may have been experiences where somebody has said no to you or somebody has judged you for your prices. Maybe you've even lost friends because you're making more money than them. And so the perceived threats are rejection, judgment, or abandonment very often. And this can also be very interlinked as well with the generational piece. Because if we heard things growing up like, we can't afford that, or money doesn't grow on trees, money equals danger. And your brain files that belief away. And then it comes out again as an adult, giving you more evidence, right, that this belief is actually true. So then as an adult, we're unconsciously pricing to avoid triggering these trauma responses, right? You become that safe choice, right? So everyone will just accept you. And we want to help everybody. But there are some very sabotaging or costs of undercharging. Number one is the energetic cost. When you undercharge, you don't just work more hours, you work with higher stress levels, higher cortisol levels, and your nervous system stays in, this kind of chronic stress state because there's not enough money, there's never enough money. And that can actually lead to a lot of adrenal fatigue. It can lead to a lot of procrastination, which can be very emotionally exhausting. And that's a big cost to undercharging. The second one is the identity cost. So every time you accept less, you reinforce this neural pathway that says, I'm not valuable enough, right? I am not. It's this sense of self, this sense of identity. And your identity becomes very intertwined to being helpful, being accessible, being reasonable, which are really just words of less than. I am less than somebody else, right? The third way that this can sabotage as well is the cost of attraction. So very often when we are undercharging, we end up attracting potential clients that are not the right clients for you to be serving. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you have something that is low cost, that they're not the right type of clients, right? It depends on the service and the product or whatever your offer is. But also, when you're attracting clients and you're undervaluing because actually what you're giving is worth more, then we end up attracting clients who primarily are maybe looking for a cheap option, or they don't actually have respect for boundaries, or they expect more hand holding. They may lack sort of self-responsibility, right? And so we end up attracting people who are just mirroring this lack that we are mirroring in ourselves, right? And that might not be where you want to be in your business right now. Now, for some of us, we can literally feel these patterns of undercharging in our body. So what does that feel like? Well, maybe it's that you get this kind of tightening in the chest when talking about money. Maybe when you get to the point where clients need to know about the cost of your services, which might be in a webinar that you're doing or on a discovery call, suddenly you start speaking much faster, right? Maybe you don't even talk about rates at all and you're like, oh, just send that to you on an email. Maybe it looks like offering immediate discounts because you feel like guilty. Maybe that guilt, you may feel that in your throat because it's about voicing your truth. It's about voicing that discussion. And sometimes it can just feel overall just physically exhausting, right? And you may love your work, but you're just feeling a little bit resentful. And all of these trauma responses that your nervous system has learnt are there to try and keep you safe, right? That's one of the most important things to consider, right? They're there for a purpose. They are there to keep you from feeling safe. right? They want to keep you safe, right? So how do we shift this feeling in the body, and why is it important to do that work first? So you may have done some money mindset work. You may have done some strategic work around this, working out like what would the financial benefits be if you were to raise your prices. But the reason that we start with the body work is because it's the body that holds the emotional charge. It's the body that it holds the feeling, and it's the feeling that informs our thoughts and our behaviors, right? So that's why we start with the body work first. So I'm going to share a very, very brief modification of the heart breathing practice that I shared with you in episode 2. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, go and listen to last week's episode. I've also popped a full guided audio with some lovely music behind it as well. You can listen to over and over and over. If you want to download a free copy of that, you can go to themoneypanel.co.uk / what was my reference that I gave you earlier? / money, breaking money cycles. So themoneypanel.co.uk / breaking money cycles. Okay, so let me just take take a few moments really to go through this sort of very short and very deep practice, and it's been very specifically designed to rewire your relationship with worth. Okay, this isn't just about thinking your way into higher prices, it's about training your body to recognize its value. And so what you can do is to place one hand on your heart and one sort of further down over your kind of solar plexus area, which is just sort of around the tummy area. Obviously, if you are driving, please don't do this at the same time. But we're just going to really connect into the feeling in the body. So we can just begin by taking a lovely deep breath in through into your heart space. So you can breathe in through the nose for the count of 6. And out through the mouth for the count of 6 as well. And as you continue to breathe at your own pace, I want you just to imagine that your heart is expanding as you take this in-breath. And your heart is expanding not just with air, but with your inherent worth, right? This is nothing to do with money. This is to do with your inherent worth as a human being. It just simply is. So you can breathe that into your heart and out through the mouth. And you can also bring an affirmation into this breath by simply saying, my worth exists independently of what I earn. So as you breathe in, my worth exists independently of what I earn. And notice any resistance. Notice any resistance. Notice any contraction. And where you notice the contraction, just continue to breathe into that space and allowing the body to open that back up into expansion with the breath. And you can continue to do that until you really feel truth settling in the body. And you can use the exercise from last week where we actually bring in a memory of a time when you felt love, appreciation, and gratitude of yourself. And bring in a memory into that heart space and allow your body to re-experience that feeling. And you can just breathe all of that compassion and love into any resistance that is showing up for you. And what is also nice to do during this exercise is to consider perhaps somebody who you have worked with, somebody who you have supported through your offerings. And not because you've come from a place of undercharging or over-delivering, but just from this place of ease. Ease with your expertise and your skills. And just feel that sense of satisfaction in your body. Feel that sense of satisfaction. And then you can take this exercise into this kind of future state with your body. And you can imagine yourself 6 months from now, and imagine yourself charging something that honors the skills that you have. And acknowledge that version of yourself. How do you hold yourself? How do you hold your shoulders when you're talking about money? How do you hold your voice? How does the voice sound? Is it confident? Is it proud? Is it loud? And you can really start to move that through the body to imagine this full embodiment of that version of you. And imagining that version of you as if you are already here. That version of you is already standing in your truth, standing in your power. So not as somebody who you are to become, but as somebody who you already are. And in that feeling, you can set a lovely intention for how you want to show up in money conversations this week. Maybe it's that your prices reflect the transformation that you facilitate, not the time that you spend trying to prove your worth, not in the times where you're comparing yourselves to others. And state it in the positive. And you can say that a few times and feel it integrating into your body. That's the most important stage to this. Really feel that in your body, and you can sit in that space for as long as is required. And when you feel complete, you can just bring your attention back into the heart space. Bring your attention back into your breath. Yeah. So nice to just feel calm and centered when we're having this conversation around money. And so one of the things that you might want to do this week after listening to this is, before you go and have any pricing conversation, is to ask yourself, what would I choose if I was trying to prove my worth away from money? What would I choose if I already knew my worth? What would you do differently? Which choice aligns with where you want to go, not where you have already been? And the goal really isn't to just immediately double your price, right? Your nervous system will probably not thank you for that. But it's really about bringing awareness to the difference between pricing from fear and pricing from worth. I want you to write that sentence down. It's the awareness of the difference between pricing from fear, not pricing from worth. And so notice which of your clients energize you, which of them drain you. How do you feel in those moments when perhaps you know that you're undercharging or overworking, and where does that resentment come from, right? We want your work to feel joyful. And if you're feeling resentful, then there's some work to be done there. right? Listen to that part of you. Okay. And when you start to consider raising your prices, consider the overall benefits to everybody. What are the benefits to your clients? What are the benefits to yourself? What are the benefits to your local communities? What are the benefits to the world? Because if you're charging more because you know that you're undercharging, right, you're going to feel less resentful, which means you're going to show up differently. Your clients are going to show up differently. Your clients are going to value that potentially more. It means that you've got more personal wealth, which means that you can buy more local products and services. It means that you could be maybe taking that extra revenue and saving it or investing it and making contributions into companies that you really care about, right, that are doing good things in the world. So it's this ripple effect. It's not just about you, it's about the overall impact that the more resourced you are, the more you can help people, not the other way around, right? I deserve, I serve. I deserve, I serve. You can steal that little mantra of mine. I deserve, I serve. I've actually heard it the other way around. I deserve, I serve, I deserve. But I feel like you want to serve because you know you deserve first, right? I deserve, I serve, right? So this week, have a little practice of that. Drop down into your body, use that heart breathing exercise, download the full audio guided version, have a look at those 3 money zones at themoneypanel.co.uk/breaking money cycles. And I will see you next week for the next episode of the Breaking Money Cycles series. See you soon, guys.